The orbital station Harmony's Gate floated in perpetual silence above the violet-streaked atmosphere of Zentara Prime, a neutral world designated for diplomatic exchanges between the 847 known civilizations of the Galactic Assembly. Within its crystalline corridors, beings of every conceivable form conducted negotiations, signed treaties, and maintained the delicate balance that prevented another interstellar conflict. Mira Chen had arrived on the station 3 standard cycles ago as part of Earth's Cultural Exchange Initiative, a program designed to introduce human customs and perspectives to the broader galactic community. At 17 Earth years, she was young for a diplomatic envoy, but humanity's approach to interstellar relations had always been unconventional, a fact that both fascinated and frustrated their alien counterparts. The morning shift in Sector 7 began like any other. Mira's quarters, a modest compartment with walls that shifted colors based on her emotional state, a Zentaran technology she still hadn't quite mastered, displayed the station's central plaza through a wide viewport. Hundreds of species moved through the thoroughfare below. The crystalline Quillari, whose bodies chimed with each step, the quadrupedal Vornash, whose fur changed patterns to express complex ideas, and the gaseous ephemera, who required specialized containment suits to interact with solid matter. She pulled on her standard-issue jumpsuit, grey with Earth's diplomatic insignia embroidered on the shoulder, and grabbed the small thermal container that held her lunch. Her mother had taught her to always prepare her own meals, a habit that connected her to home across the impossible distance of 2,400 light-years. Today's selection was simple: rice balls filled with pickled plum, cucumber slices, and a small portion of teriyaki tofu her friend had shipped from the agricultural dome on Luna Station. The Cultural Integration Center occupied the northern wing of Harmony's Gate, a massive hall where representatives from various civilizations demonstrated their homeworld traditions. Mira's assignment for the day involved manning Earth's exhibition booth, answering questions about human culture, and distributing informational materials about her planet's history, art, and social structures. "Ambassador Chen," a melodic voice called out as she entered the hall. The title always made Mira uncomfortable. She was just a student on an exchange program, not a real diplomat. But the Quillari Protocol Master insisted that anyone representing their civilization held ambassadorial status. "Good morning, Coordinator Teller," Mira replied, bowing slightly to the tall insectoid being whose compound eyes reflected the hall's ambient lighting in fractured rainbows. Teller supervised the Cultural Integration Center with meticulous attention to protocol, ensuring every species' customs were respected and properly showcased. "Your booth's interactive display requires calibration," Teller informed her, mandibles clicking in what Mira had learned to recognize as mild concern. "The holographic projection of your planet's geographical features is displaying Antarctica at incorrect polar coordinates." "I'll fix it right away," Mira assured him, making her way through the exhibition hall. The space was organized by stellar region, with Earth's booth positioned between the Andromedan Confederacy's massive crystalline sculpture garden and the Triangulum Collective's sound-based art installation that produced music from quantum vibrations. As Mira worked on recalibrating the holographic display, she noticed the unusual activity near the hall's main entrance. Security personnel from multiple species had formed a perimeter, and the atmospheric processors were working overtime to accommodate the specific environmental requirements of someone important. The crowd began to whisper or emit the various sounds, lights, and chemical signals that constituted communication for different species. Emperor Zalthran was coming to the Cultural Integration Center. The sovereign of the Cathari Empire, Zalthran's reputation preceded him across every civilized sector of known space. The Cathari had achieved interstellar travel 40,000 standard years before humanity had discovered fire, and their empire spanned 6,000 inhabited systems. And Zalthran himself was ancient beyond human comprehension. Having ruled for 12,000 years, through a combination of political acumen, technological superiority, and the Cathari's natural longevity that could extend tens of thousands of years. Physically, the Cathari resembled what ancient Earth mythology might have called dragons, massive beings with scales that shimmered like liquid metal, 6 limbs ending in dexterous claws, and faces that combined reptilian and avian features in a way that conveyed both intelligence and primal power. Zalthran stood nearly 4 meters tall when upright, his scales displaying a deep purple hue that indicated his royal lineage. Mira had read the briefing materials about the Cathari. Their civilization valued hierarchy, ancient tradition, and demonstrable achievement. They respected strength, not merely physical, but intellectual and cultural. A species earned Cathari regard through contributions to art, science, philosophy, or statecraft that stood the test of millennia. Humanity, having joined the Galactic Assembly only 40 standard years ago, had not yet impressed the Cathari. The hall fell into a respectful silence as Emperor Zalthran entered, accompanied by his retinue of advisors and the mandatory security detail that Protocol Master Teller had frantically coordinated since receiving notice of the Imperial visit 3 hours earlier. The Emperor moved with deliberate grace, his massive form somehow never appearing clumsy despite the space designed for much smaller beings. Zalthran visited each booth methodically, spending exactly the protocol-mandated time at each display, asking questions that demonstrated his extensive knowledge of galactic civilizations and offering comments that were unfailingly polite, yet revealed little of his actual opinions. The representatives at each booth stood straighter, spoke more carefully, and clearly understood the significance of receiving the Emperor's attention. Mira checked her display one final time, ensuring the holographic Earth rotated at the correct speed and the informational overlays accurately highlighted human achievements in various fields. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear exactly, but from the sudden awareness that she was about to represent her entire species before one of the galaxy's most powerful and influential leaders. The Emperor's procession reached the Andromedan booth. Mira could hear the crystalline being's harmonic communication, each syllable producing notes that formed complex chords. Zalthran listened attentively, nodding at intervals that suggested comprehension and interest. Then he turned toward Earth's booth, his golden eyes, each the size of Mira's clenched fist, fixing on her with an intensity that made her acutely aware of every racing heartbeat. "Ambassador!" Zalthran's voice resonated through the hall, carrying a harmonic depth that the translation system struggled to fully render in Standard Galactic. "I understand your species has recently achieved faster-than-light travel and joined our assembly." "Yes, Your Imperial Majesty," Mira replied, performing the bow that her cultural briefing had specified for addressing Cathari royalty. 45 degrees, hands clasped at solar plexus, held for 3 seconds. "Humanity is honored to participate in galactic civilization and to learn from elder species, such as the Cathari." "Elder," Zalthran repeated, and something that might have been amusement flickered across his scaled features. "A diplomatic word for ancient. Tell me, what does humanity offer to the Assembly? What unique contribution justifies your inclusion among the civilizations of known space?" The question wasn't hostile, but neither was it entirely friendly. Mira had studied enough about interstellar diplomacy to recognize a test when she heard one. Other species were watching, waiting to see how the young human would respond to the Emperor's challenge. "We offer perspective, Your Majesty," Mira answered, keeping her voice steady. "Humanity is young by galactic standards, but we've experienced rapid technological and social evolution. We've made mistakes, countless mistakes, and learned from them. We've created art, music, literature, and philosophy during our brief existence that we believe adds value to the broader cultural tapestry of the galaxy. And perhaps most importantly, we offer enthusiasm and hope. Qualities that younger species might contribute to civilizations that have seen millennia pass." Zalthran regarded her silently for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 5 seconds. Then his attention shifted to the holographic display, where Earth rotated in serene blues and greens. "Your planet appears remarkably hospitable," he observed. "Abundant water, diverse ecosystems, a single dominant sapient species. How did humanity avoid self-destruction long enough to reach the stars? Many species predict your civilization will collapse within another standard century due to internal conflicts." The bluntness startled Mira, though she tried not to show it. "We almost didn't survive," she admitted. "We came very close to destroying ourselves several times through warfare, environmental damage, resource depletion. But we developed something that ultimately saved us, the ability to cooperate despite our differences. Humans learned, slowly and painfully, that our diversity was a strength rather than a weakness. We're still learning that lesson, honestly, but it's what allowed us to unite enough to reach beyond our solar system." "Uber cooperation," Zalthran mused, "an interesting claim from a species whose history is predominantly characterized by competition and conflict." "Respectfully, Your Majesty, I think most species' histories contain both cooperation and conflict," Mira countered gently. "The question is which impulse we choose to strengthen. Humanity chose cooperation, imperfectly, incompletely, but genuinely." For the first time, Zalthran's expression shifted into something that might have been respect. His scales rippled with color changes that Mira's limited knowledge of Cathari body language couldn't interpret. "I see," the Emperor said simply. "What is that container you carry, Ambassador?" Mira glanced down at the thermal lunch container she'd set on the booth's counter. "Oh, this is just my lunch, Your Majesty. I prepare my own meals, a habit from home." "May I inquire as to its contents?" The request surprised Mira, and apparently surprised Zalthran's retinue as well, based on the subtle stiffening of postures and the sudden intensity of attention focused on their exchange. "Of course, Your Majesty, it contains rice balls, a traditional earth food made from cultivated grain, filled with pickled plum, along with sliced cucumber and seasoned tofu. Simple fare, but it reminds me of home." "Food as memory," Zalthran said softly. "Food as connection to place and culture. The Cathari understand this concept deeply. Our ceremonial meals are ritualized remembrances of our homeworld's ancient ecosystems, most of which no longer exist." Something in the Emperor's tone, a note of loss perhaps, or nostalgia, made Mira act on impulse before her diplomatic training could intervene. "Would you like to try some, Your Majesty?" The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Every being in the Cultural Integration Center seemed to stop breathing or performing whatever respiratory function their biology required. Protocol Master Teller's entire body vibrated with what was unmistakably alarm. Zalthran's golden eyes widened fractionally, the first genuine surprise Mira had seen him display. Several of his advisors began speaking urgently in the Cathari primary language, their scales flashing colors that suggested serious concern. "You offer me food from your personal supply?" Zalthran asked carefully. "Food prepared by your own hands?" "Yes, Your Majesty," Mira confirmed, only now beginning to realize she might have committed some terrible diplomatic error. I apologize if I've offended. I meant no disrespect." "Disrespect?" Zalthran's voice carried a strange quality that the translation system rendered as wonder. "Young Ambassador, do you understand what you have done?" Mira's heart sank. "I've violated some protocol? I'm sorry, I'm still learning. You have offered to share sustenance from your own portion," Zalthran interrupted gently. "In Cathari culture, in the culture of many elder species, this is among the most profound gestures of respect and trust possible. To offer food that would otherwise nourish your own body, to invite another to partake of sustenance you personally prepared, is to acknowledge them as worthy of your care and resources. It is an act that transcends diplomatic formality and speaks to genuine connection between beings." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried across the entirely silent hall. "In 12,000 years of rule, no one outside my immediate family has offered to share their personal food with me. Every meal I am served is prepared by imperial chefs according to ancient protocols. Every morsel I consume has been tested, ritualized, and presented according to traditions older than your species. You, a young human who has been in space for mere cycles, have offered me something no sophisticated diplomat or ancient civilization has thought to provide. A simple, genuine act of sharing. Zalthran straightened to his full height, and then, slowly and deliberately, the Emperor of the Cathari Empire bowed to Mira Chen, not the slight inclination of the head that constituted formal acknowledgement between rulers, but a deep, sincere bow that brought his massive head level with hers. The Cultural Integration Center erupted in controlled chaos, the alien equivalent of gasps, shocked exclamations, and frantic recording of the historical moment. Protocol Master Teller's entire crystalline structure threatened to shatter from the resonance of astonishment. "I would be honored to share your meal, Ambassador Chen," Emperor Zalthran said, "if the offer stands." Mira's hands shook as she opened the thermal container, removing one of the rice balls and placing it on a small plate she'd packed. She had no idea what Cathari digestive systems could process, no certainty that human food wouldn't poison him. No training for this scenario whatsoever, but the Emperor took the rice ball in one massive claw with surprising delicacy, examining it briefly before taking a careful bite. His eyes closed as he chewed slowly, processing flavors that evolution on a world 6,000 light-years distant had never intended for his biology to experience. "The grain is nurturing," he said after swallowing. "The pickled fruit provides an acidic contrast that is fascinating, and there is something else, a umami quality I believe your species calls it. This simple food contains complexity." "Thank you, Your Majesty," Mira managed to say, though her voice barely rose above a whisper. Zalthran finished the rice ball, then fixed her with those penetrating golden eyes. "You have given me a gift beyond protocol, young ambassador. This requires reciprocation, not out of diplomatic obligation, but out of genuine gratitude. I would request your presence at the Imperial Wing tomorrow at the 14th hour. There are matters I wish to discuss with you, and with humanity through you." Before Mira could respond, the Emperor bowed once more, a gesture that would be discussed and analyzed across every diplomatic channel in known space for years to come, and departed the Cultural Integration Center with his still shocked retinue. Mira stood alone at her booth, staring at the thermal container that had somehow altered the trajectory of Earth's relationship with one of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations, and wondered what possibly came next. The message from Emperor Zalthran's office arrived at Mira's quarters precisely one standard hour after their encounter in the Cultural Integration Center. The communication crystal, a Cathari technology that stored information in quantum states, allowing messages to contain not just words, but emotional context and cultural nuance, pulsed with a soft violet light on her desk. Mira activated it with trembling fingers, and a holographic projection of one of Zalthran's senior advisors materialized in her small living space. The Cathari official, whose scales displayed the deep crimson of administrative rank, spoke with formal precision. "Ambassador Chen, His Imperial Majesty extends formal invitation to private audience tomorrow, 14th hour station time, Imperial Wing Diplomatic Salon 7. Dress code, cultural representative formal. Topic, Earth-Cathari relations and potential collaborative initiatives. Duration, approximately 2 standard hours. Refreshments will be provided according to human dietary requirements. Attendance is requested but not compulsory, though declining would be interpreted as significant diplomatic statement." The hologram dissolved, leaving Mira alone with the implications of what she just heard. A private audience with Emperor Zalthran. 2 hours. Collaborative initiatives. Every phrase carried weight that her 3 months of diplomatic training had barely prepared her to understand. Her communication console chimed almost immediately, a cascade of incoming messages from Earth's diplomatic corps, the Galactic Assembly's Cultural Affairs Office. and no fewer than 17 news organizations requesting interviews about the incident. Apparently, the Emperor's bow had already spread across interstellar communication networks, with various species offering wildly different interpretations of what it meant. Mira ignored most of the messages and opened the priority channel to Earth's embassy station, where Ambassador Torres, Earth's senior diplomatic representative to the Galactic Assembly, would undoubtedly want an immediate explanation. The ambassador's face appeared on screen, his expression carefully neutral in a way that suggested he was working very hard to maintain composure. "Mira, I've been informed that you had an interesting encounter today." "Sir, I can explain." "I'm not looking for an explanation," Torres interrupted gently. "I'm looking for a debrief. Walk me through exactly what happened and don't leave anything out. This might be the most significant diplomatic development Earth has had since joining the Assembly." Mira recounted the encounter, from the Emperor's arrival at the Cultural Integration Center to the moment she'd offered to share her lunch. Torres listened without interrupting, though his eyebrows climbed progressively higher as the story unfolded. When she finished, there was a long silence before Torres spoke. "Mira, do you understand what you've done? Not the protocol implications, I'll worry about those, but what this means for how the Kethari perceive us." "I think I offered him food, and he appreciated it," Mira ventured, knowing that answer was inadequate. "You treated one of the galaxy's most powerful leaders like a person rather than a position," Torres explained. "Every other species approaches the Kethari with either fear or calculated deference. They see an ancient empire, a civilization that mastered technologies we're still trying to understand, a military force that could reduce planets to dust. You saw someone who might enjoy a rice ball, and somehow, impossibly, that's exactly what Zalthran needed." "I didn't calculate any of that," Mira admitted. It seemed like the right thing to do in the moment." "That's what makes it brilliant," Torres replied. "It was genuine. Elder species can detect insincerity across light years. They've had millennia to perfect that skill, but authenticity, apparently that's still rare enough to be valuable." "Now, about tomorrow's meeting. I'm assigning Senior Cultural Analyst Kepler to brief you on Kethari diplomatic conventions. You'll also receive files on the Empire's current political situation, economic priorities, and cultural sensitivities. Review everything tonight." "Yes, sir," Mira agreed, though the thought of absorbing that much information in less than a day made her head spin. "And Mira?" Torres's expression softened slightly. "Trust your instincts tomorrow. They've served you well so far. Just maybe check with protocol before offering any more food to galactic leaders, yes." Despite her anxiety, Mira laughed. "I'll do my best, sir." The next 12 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Senior Cultural Analyst Kepler, a thoughtful woman who'd spent 30 years studying Kethari civilization, arrived at Mira's quarters with multiple data tablets and an expression of barely contained excitement. "This is extraordinary," Kepler explained as they worked through diplomatic protocols and cultural context. "The Kethari value age, experience, and demonstrated wisdom above almost everything else. They're polite to younger species, but they don't genuinely respect us. We haven't existed long enough to earn it by their standards. But Emperor Zalthran bowed to you. Do you know the last time a Kethari emperor bowed to a representative of a young species?" "I'm guessing never," Mira offered. "Never," Kepler confirmed. "Not in recorded galactic history spanning 40,000 years. You've created a precedent, which means whatever happens tomorrow will set the tone for Earth-Kethari relations for possibly centuries to come. No pressure, though." They reviewed the files Torres had provided, the Kethari Empire's complex political structure, where the Emperor held supreme authority but governed through a network of regional administrators who'd held their positions for millennia. The Empire's economic focus on advanced energy systems and quantum computing technologies, their cultural emphasis on preserving historical knowledge and artistic achievements from across their long history. One critical thing to understand, Kepler emphasized, is that Cathari make decisions across timescales that humans struggle to comprehend. They think in centuries the way we think in years. If Zalthran is considering collaborative initiatives with Earth, he's not thinking about immediate benefits. He's thinking about what our civilizations might accomplish together over the next 1,000 years. The concept made Mira's already anxious mind reel. How was she supposed to discuss 1,000-year plans when she hadn't even decided what to study in university? The 14th hour arrived with alarming speed. Mira, dressed in her formal diplomatic attire, a tailored suit that incorporated traditional Earth elements with materials designed for interstellar environments, subtle but elegant, and made her way to the Imperial Wing of Harmony's Gate. The Imperial Wing occupied the station's most prestigious section, with architecture that adapted to accommodate Cathari scale while maintaining the aesthetic principles of their ancient civilization. Massive corridors featured walls that displayed slowly shifting patterns of crystallized light, representing mathematical equations that Cathari culture considered fundamentally beautiful. 2 Cathari guards, each nearly as large as Zalthran himself, stood at the entrance to Diplomatic Salon 7. They examined Mira's credentials with what she'd learned to recognize as Cathari thoroughness before granting her entry. The salon was breathtaking. The space combined elements from hundreds of civilizations, creating an environment that simultaneously honored diversity and established common ground. The ceiling displayed a real-time star map showing the location of every assembly member species' homeworld. The walls shifted between transparency and opacity, alternately revealing the vista of Zentara Prime below and displaying artistic works from various cultures. Emperor Zalthran stood near the center of the room, his massive form somehow fitting naturally into the space despite his size. He wore formal robes that Mira had learned represented his role as cultural steward of the Cathari people, deep purple fabric adorned with equations and artistic motifs that documented 40,000 years of civilization. Ambassador Chen, Zalthran greeted her warmly. Thank you for accepting my invitation. Please be comfortable. The furniture adapted as Mira approached, a technology she still found fascinating, forming a seat perfectly proportioned for her human frame, at a height that allowed comfortable eye contact with the Emperor when he settled into his own space. Your Majesty, I'm honored to be here, Mira replied, performing the appropriate bow, though I confess I'm uncertain why you've requested this audience. Direct and honest, Zalthran observed with what might have been approval. Refreshing qualities. I requested this meeting because your gesture yesterday revealed something I have been seeking to understand about humanity, something that data files and formal diplomatic exchanges could not convey. He paused, his golden eyes studying her with an intensity that was nevertheless not uncomfortable. The Galactic Assembly has debated humanity's inclusion extensively. Many elder species argue that your civilization is too young, too unstable, too prone to internal conflict to meaningfully contribute to interstellar society. The Cathari have remained neutral in these debates, observing humanity with curiosity, but withholding judgment. Yesterday you provided the data point I needed to form an opinion. Mira's heart raced, but she kept her voice steady. What data point was that, Your Majesty? Spontaneous generosity, Zalthran answered. The instinct to share resources with a stranger, to offer comfort and connection without calculation of advantage. These behaviors exist in many species during their early evolution. They're survival traits for social beings, but most civilizations lose them as they mature. They become sophisticated, strategic, careful. They learn to measure every gesture, to calculate every exchange. It serves them well in many ways, but they lose something essential in the process. The Emperor's scales rippled with color changes that Kepler's briefing had taught Mira indicated deep contemplation. Humanity is young enough that you haven't yet lost that instinct for genuine connection. You still act on impulse, on feeling, on empathy that transcends strategic thinking. The question that interests me, the question that should interest all elder species, is whether your civilization can maintain those qualities as you mature, or whether you'll follow the pattern of becoming progressively more calculated and isolated. I don't know the answer to that, Your Majesty, Mira admitted, but I hope we can keep what makes us human while also learning from more experienced civilizations like yours. An honest response, Zalthran acknowledged. Now let me be equally honest with you. The Cathari Empire faces challenges that our technology and ancient knowledge cannot fully address. We have achieved remarkable things. We can manipulate matter at quantum scales, travel between stars in moments, extend individual lifespans across millennia. But we have also become isolated in our sophistication. We solve problems through calculation rather than creativity. We preserve what exists rather than imagining what could exist. We have optimized our civilization to a point where further evolution has become difficult. He leaned forward slightly, his massive form conveying earnest intensity. Younger species bring fresh perspectives precisely because they haven't yet learned all the reasons why things cannot be done. Earth has gone from primitive combustion engines to faster-than-light travel in barely 2 centuries, a pace of innovation that elder species find almost incomprehensible. You've developed technologies and social structures that we never considered because you approached problems without our accumulated assumptions about what was possible. Are you saying the Cathari want to learn from humanity? Mira asked, surprised by the implication. I'm saying the Cathari need to learn from humanity, Zalthran corrected, as do many elder species, though most are too proud to acknowledge it. Your gesture yesterday, offering to share your lunch, demonstrated a quality that my civilization desperately needs to relearn: the ability to make genuine connections across difference. You saw an emperor and offered food to a person. That distinction matters more than you know. The emperor gestured, and the wall displays shifted to show collaborative projects between various assembly species, joint scientific research, cultural exchange programs, cooperative infrastructure development. I wish to propose a formal partnership between Earth and the Cathari Empire, Zalthran announced. Not the standard diplomatic relationship of mutual recognition and trade agreements, but something more substantial. I envision joint research initiatives where human creativity combines with Cathari technical knowledge, cultural exchange programs where our peoples learn from each other's perspectives, educational opportunities where young humans study in Cathari institutions, and young Cathari, yes, we do occasionally produce new generations, experience human approaches to learning and discovery. Mira struggled to process what she was hearing. A formal partnership between humanity and one of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. The implications were staggering. Your Majesty, I'm deeply honored by this proposal, but I'm not authorized to negotiate such significant agreements. I'm just a student on a cultural exchange program. Earth's senior diplomats should be involved in formalizing the details, certainly, Zalthran interrupted gently. But this conversation is not a negotiation, Ambassador Chen. It is an expression of intent. My intent to elevate Earth's status within the galactic community through Cathari support and collaboration. Your senior diplomats will receive formal communications through appropriate channels. But I wanted you to hear this directly from me, because your action initiated this development. You reminded me that sophistication without genuine connection is merely isolation wearing elaborate clothes. The Emperor stood, and Mira quickly rose as well, following protocol. I have arranged for you to tour several Cathari facilities on this station over the coming days, Zalthran continued. You'll see our research laboratories, cultural archives, and educational centers. I want you to understand what we can offer humanity and what we hope to gain from the partnership. More importantly, I want you to share meals with Cathari citizens, not state dinners or diplomatic receptions, but simple shared food like what you offered me. I want my people to experience what I experienced yesterday. "I would be honored, Your Majesty," Mira managed to say, though her mind was spinning with the enormity of what was happening. Zalthran approached her, moving with that characteristic grace that made his massive size seem almost irrelevant. "Before you depart, I wish to give you something, a personal gift, not a diplomatic exchange." He reached into his robes and withdrew a small crystalline object that pulsed with soft internal light. "This is a memory crystal from Cathar Prime, our homeworld. It contains recordings of our planet's primary moon rising over the eternal ocean, a sight that has inspired Cathari for 40,000 years. When you feel overwhelmed by the path ahead, activate this crystal, and remember that every civilization, no matter how advanced it becomes, still finds wonder in simple beauty. We are not so different, your species and mine." Mira accepted the crystal with shaking hands, the weight of the gift's significance threatening to overwhelm her composure. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I will treasure this, as I will treasure the memory of a young human who saw an emperor and offered him lunch," Zalthran replied, his voice carrying warmth that the translation system barely captured. "You have changed the trajectory of our civilization's relationship, Ambassador Chen. I hope you feel proud of that achievement." As Mira left Diplomatic Salon 7, clutching the memory crystal and trying to process everything that had just occurred, she realized that Zalthran had been right about one thing. Simple gestures could carry profound weight. She'd offered food to be kind, and somehow that kindness had opened doors between worlds. The real question now was what humanity would build through those doors, and whether they could live up to the potential that one of the galaxy's wisest beings had seen in them. The joint Earth-Cathari Research Station Confluence orbited a binary star system at the midpoint between Sol and Cathar Prime, its sleek design incorporating architectural principles from both civilizations. Inside its laboratories, human scientists worked alongside Cathari researchers, combining innovative approaches with ancient knowledge to tackle problems that neither species could solve alone. Mira Chen stood in the station's central dining hall, a space that had become the heart of cultural exchange in ways the original designers had never anticipated. Around her, humans and Cathari shared meals, exchanging not just food, but stories, ideas, and perspectives that bridged millennia of evolutionary divergence. Emperor Zalthran had visited Confluence twice since its inauguration, each time insisting on eating in the communal dining hall rather than in the formal reception areas. He'd shared human cuisine prepared by students like Mira, and had introduced human researchers to Cathari dishes that contained ingredients from worlds they'd never imagined. The partnership had exceeded even Zalthran's optimistic projections. 3 major technological breakthroughs had emerged from joint research in just 6 months. Advances in energy efficiency, medical treatments, and communication systems that neither species could have achieved independently. Cultural exchange programs had placed young humans in Cathari educational institutions and brought Cathari scholars to Earth's universities, creating connections that would shape both civilizations for generations. But more than the formal achievements, something subtle had shifted in galactic politics. Other elder species had begun approaching Earth with genuine interest, rather than polite tolerance, recognizing that the Cathari, famously selective about partnerships, had identified something valuable in humanity's approach to the cosmos. Mira had completed her official exchange program and accepted a permanent position as cultural liaison aboard Confluence, coordinating the daily interactions that made the theoretical partnership a practical reality. She still prepared her own lunches, though now she often found herself cooking for dozens of beings, teaching Cathari how to make rice balls, and learning to prepare dishes from a dozen other worlds. In her quarters, the memory crystal from Zalthran held a place of honor on her desk. She activated it sometimes when the weight of responsibility felt overwhelming, watching the alien moons rise over an ocean 6,000 light-years from Earth, finding comfort in the reminder that wonder and beauty transcended cultural difference. Ambassador Torres had visited Confluence the previous month, touring the facilities with barely concealed pride. During a private conversation, he told Mira something she'd carried with her ever since. Diplomacy isn't really about treaties and trade agreements, though those matter. It's about recognizing the person inside the position, the shared desires beneath the cultural differences. You understood that instinctively when you offered an emperor your lunch. Never lose that understanding, no matter how sophisticated you become. As Mira watched humans and Cathari share a meal they'd prepared together, earth vegetables seasoned with Cathari spices, creating something neither culture had tasted before, she thought about Zalthran's concern that civilizations lost their capacity for genuine connection as they matured. Maybe that didn't have to be inevitable. Maybe humanity could chart a different course, maintaining their instinct for empathy and spontaneous kindness, even as they acquired the knowledge and sophistication of elder species. Maybe that was humanity's unique contribution to the galactic community. Not advanced technology or ancient wisdom, but the stubborn insistence that connection mattered more than calculation, that people mattered more than protocol. In the dining hall, a young Cathari researcher, barely 200 years old, practically a child by their species standards, nervously approached Mira with a plate containing something that looked like crystallized honey but smelled like cinnamon. "Ambassador Chen," the researcher said hesitantly, "I prepared this using a traditional Cathari recipe my family has maintained for 8,000 years. I wondered if... Would you like to try some?" Mira smiled, recognizing her own gesture from 6 months ago reflected back to her across the distance between species. "I would be honored," she replied, accepting the offered food. And in that moment, one young being offering sustenance to another, bridging worlds with simple generosity, Mira understood exactly what Emperor Zalthran had seen in humanity's potential. The future spread before them like the star field visible through Confluence's viewports. Vast, unknown, and full of possibilities that could only be reached by traveling together. It had started with a shared lunch. Where it would lead, no one could predict, but Mira suspected it would be extraordinary.